Welcome to Talk Tuesday, a series dedicated to empowering youth and families. This series is brought to you by Steps Foundation Incorporated, where advocacy meets education for the betterment of young minds. I'm Amaya Ward McCaskill, your host and peer educator at Steps Foundation Incorporated. This month, we're honoring a group of unsung heroes, family caregivers, especially the teens who balance caregiving with school, friends, and their personal lives. In our Family Caregiver Month series, we'll be exploring the unique challenges caregivers face, discussing ways to balance caregiving with personal life, connecting you with vital resources, and celebrating the hard work and dedication of caregivers everywhere. Each week, we'll offer insights, encouragement, and practical advice to support caregivers and their families. Let's dive in and shine a light on these incredible young people who care for others so selflessly.
All right, it's my turn. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about balancing caregiving with personal life, um, and what are some tips and tricks as to how to deal with that. Um, to start us off, the first question that I have is what time management strategies work best for balancing school and caregiving? Like if you're still in school and you're taking care of someone, what are some strategies that they can try and do? Anyone want to try and answer that?
Sure, I can jump in on that one. I think with most things, it's going to be really being disciplined about recognizing what are the priority things that you have to do, kind of like prioritizing what has to be done by a certain time, and then what are some things that maybe can wait or not be done at all. Um, and when you've gotten it to that list of things that you must do, really just trying to be efficient and figuring out like what are some things that you can get help with, what are some things that um you might be able to. So for example, like I know for me, I didn't have a whole lot of caregiving that I did when I was still in school, but often it was just about managing my own time and being able to do multiple things. So I would use my ride home on the bus, for example, to do homework or, finding ways to maximize the time that would otherwise be downtime, to do something like that. Or if even now in my life, when I'm trying to multitask, I will find a thing. Let's say I need to read something. If I can find that thing via audio so that I can listen to it while I'm doing something else, I'll do that just to give myself like an opportunity to do something that doesn't take the same level of attention. Like maybe I'm washing dishes or doing laundry or something like that, but I can listen to that thing that I have to listen to while I'm doing some other things that feel like absolute needs in my life as well.
That's good. I actually read the question from the wrong list because this is from last week. So thank you for answering that anyway. That was very awesome. I appreciate it. Um, but let me actually get to the questions I was supposed to ask. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. So the actual topic for this week is resources and support for caregivers. Because we've talked about as Miss Lida has Dr. Lytle already said, how to manage our time wisely when it comes to caregiving. We've talked about understanding what it is to be a caregiver the first week. And now we're going to talk about some resources that can be helpful for people who are caregivers and need that extra support, and that don't know maybe where to go. So the actual first question I have is, what are some community resources that are available specifically for teen caregivers? Because people might think there's only stuff for adults, but are there any community resources um, you guys can think of? um, that are available specifically for teens?
That one I don't have as much to share about. I do think that I'm a very big fan of the internet at our fingers, right? So looking at local resources, getting connected with your library will often have some resourcing, and just looking for literally Googling what are teen caregiver resources in my area might help. I know Mental Health America is usually a good place to find um, just general resourcing, but I'm certain there's going to be things that are more local to where you are as far as what county you're in and things like that that might help you really find some realistic resources.
Mhm. Yeah. That's what I was gonna say, because I don't personally know any resources, but I know like how to look them up. Like,
Yeah, so once you look on Google or whatever the other resource, they offer webinars and stuff like that to help caregivers to
mhm.
offer support.
And I
And
was going
then
to say exactly
I
what
just
Dr.
pulled
Lytle
up.
said too. Hey, Spit.
What's up, fam? I just pulled up. Um, it's you can just go on the Department of United States. I hate saying that word. United States Department of Health and Human Services. And then there's just multiple availabilities there. You just gotta put in your local area. Like Dr. Lytle said, find what's close to you. Another good thing, it sounds corny, and especially for young folks are a little bit hesitant on where they spend their time on social media. But I come to find out like Facebook, if you put some searches in, you can find some groups. Now, you got to be, you got to do your background on who's in the group and what the group is for. But if I probably do a search in like groups on Facebook and see if there's somebody similar in your situation, kind of doing what you do, right? Or even at your school. The funny thing about young folks is we think we're the only ones going through something, and so we don't want to share. You know what I'm saying? But if you have the wherewithal to speak to a counselor or administrative personnel at your school, share it with them. Maybe just like in a one-on-one meeting, and then kind of have them see if anybody would be interested in starting a group. See, the great thing about being in school, you can create your and this is indirectly, directly associated with support groups, especially when we're talking young folks. When in your high school, all you need is, I think, 3 students and then a teacher as the advisor to have a campus club. And you can name it, youth support. You can name it whatever you want, but you definitely need a teacher advisor. So I would say, talk to your school, somebody you can, you trust, and see if that's something you can start. And this is another thing I will share with young folks because I didn't know even, as a seasoned human being, um, if it's not there, you do it. Like if the resource is not available, you create that resource. You become the resource. Um, Again, that's adding to the plate if you're already a caregiver. But you may find a little bit of comfort in that becoming the resource because you have that lived experience. So that's one thing I encourage young folks. You become the resource if there's not one available or close to you.
Yeah. Speaking of the whole school thing of starting a club and talking to counselors, what role do school counselors play when like a teen comes up and is like, "Hey, I need some help with this, this, and that." How, what would, what do school counselors, what is their role in like supporting these teen caregivers?
So since I just recently been involved with the school district for the past 4 years, in the middle of, an unprecedented pandemic, I think there was this, I think prior to the pandemic, and as we got to be careful how we generalize some things. Yes, the pandemic was horrible, but I also think it brought some other ways of thinking outside the box to provide some different ways of getting some work done. So I think prior to the pandemic, I think counselors were there for the more academic part, or at least that was the perception. Now you see after the isolation that the pandemic brought, now you see a lot of more social emotional facilitators in the counseling department, generally student services or wellness. I'm not really sure how it is titled across the country. So if we're talking counselor academic, then yes, that's their goal is to get you to high school, right? With your passing grades. But then there should be another, counselor, if you will, to assist with, social and emotional challenges that students are going through. And that includes being a caregiver. And I think, again, when we start talking about caregiver, and I don't want to misconstrue the two, but caregivers, when you're caring for your parents or your siblings or another loved one in the health sense, we have a lot of students who are caregivers in the sense that they're first generation English speakers and they're doing the heavy lifting for the family, and they could be second grade, sixth grade, ninth grade, and they're trying to, get their school, learn another language, and then also help mom and dad navigate taking the necessities, when people call or there's an interaction, so definitely they should be in place. The counselor traditionally at the school is for academics, but I think now there's more, or there should be availability for the actual social and emotional part where students have these challenges. And it's just up to the student to go kind of, and that's unfortunate, that the student has to go look for them. I mean, they're probably given out on the website. They're probably given out in the first week of school with like all the resources available. But I mean, how many people actually look at that? So, go to your local school in the admin office and they could probably point you in the right direction.
And I'll jump in a little bit to give a little clarification because school counselors are trained for social emotional as well. It's just how they've been traditionally utilized. And so it has previously been very focused on academics, but they are equipped to handle short-term, brief solution type things with students so that they can make it through their school day, so that they can handle things. However, primarily, and that's if you are a licensed school counselor, because there are folks who are often working in guidance spaces who aren't necessarily don't have to uphold the same credentialing. And so that's really going to be many of the differences that you'll find. But often what happens is school districts will have a certain number of school counselors. And unfortunately, they're spread so thin, they have multiple schools they're reporting or they're handling. So one school counselor might see students at 3, 4, 5 different schools. And so you can't have the same type of one-on-one therapeutic situation in those instances. And that's where the resourcing comes in. That's where they start to make referrals to community organizations, or they'll encourage the students to find support in other ways. Here in Florida, or at least in Duval County, I know that all of our students have access to, I believe it's called Violet, or it's an organization where the district has partnered so that students can receive mental health counseling for free up here. So I don't know if that's all throughout Florida, but I will say check your resources, check with your schools, check on your county, your public school, what is it called? Your school's overall administration. I'm losing the word right now, but
can I jump in? Can I help you, Doc?
Yes, please.
So I know here in California, we have in a county, you got the County of Office of Education that runs all the schools in the county. And then once you get into that, let's just say district of the city where
the school district. Yes.
The school
Thank
district.
You.
School
I
district.
just could not. Right. You're a superintendent, all of those folks.
Yes.
And see what they have for your students, because often there are resources that people just don't know about or aren't aware of. And I know even since the pandemic, that's when we actually saw such a huge rise in mental health challenges with our students. So many struggles with students learning at home and all of those different things that came to the forefront. And it really caused people to pay attention to our students, to mental health in the youth, and recognizing that although for years the profession of counseling has known that many disordered ways of behaving show up in adolescence, it's only now that we're actually really paying attention to how our students are showing up and behaving, or not behaving, so that we can be aware that they may or may not need additional support. And this is one of those things when you are a caregiver, whether it's supporting your family linguistically, as Smith mentioned, or you're actually having to take care of your siblings, your brothers and sisters, or your elderly parents or other family members in the home. That's a space that many students live in and have been in for a long time, and so it feels normal when that's your regular everyday day-to-day life. And so it may not feel like you need additional support, but sometimes it's just a matter of, do you need a break? Have you had a chance to take a break? Do you have a moment to just be your age, to embrace your age, and to just have a good time and not be responsible for anyone but yourself for a little while? And sometimes that's hard to find space to do that, because everyone in that family is likely pitching in to make sure that everyone can survive and be well. And so just realizing if there are ways that you can get a little support at school, or if there is little ways that you can maybe have time to get support with your homework so that it's a little easier when you get home. Those are the types of things that I would check in with the school counselor about, and see if there are resources, or other ways that they can support you there.
Very good. I've claps all around. You guys did really well. And we were talking a lot about mental health resources, right? And talking to your school to find out what kind of resources your school kind of has. At my school, I of course did not go to a public school. I went to a private school, so it might be slightly different. But I went to a private school where the school counselors were all licensed. So for the most part, I would go to my school counselor for literally everything. Like I would talk to her about like most if not all of the stuff that I was struggling with, and she would help me with that. And we didn't have Violet. At least I don't know if it's because we were a private school that it was different. Probably that's probably the case. But they mostly encouraged like school counselor, or our school was really small, so someone knew the parent of someone or not of someone else who could help. Like it was kind of that was the kind of situation I was in. So if so like for the private school kids like me who don't know how to get your resources, I would say just talk to your school counselor anyway, because there's probably they probably do know some way to help you, even if they don't have that public school kind of like district. Talk to the district or the superintendent, like just there's probably other ways that they have.
And
I
I'll
can't
jump
say.
in and say real quick, it's gonna be different for every county, every
Yeah.
district. So everybody is not gonna have Violet, because every district uses something different and partners with different people. So as she said, it's a partnership that their district has with this company that's coming into the schools and taking care of those people. So
Mhm.
even with private schools will bring in their own people, and it's because they're not necessarily abiding by what the district is saying needs to happen. They're making their own set of rules. A lot of private schools will have their own private counselors.
Yeah.
They're paying them to sit on staff and do just that. Even when you think about charter schools also abide by a different set of rules, even than the district and what they're doing, because they have a charter that's governed by other people. And
Yeah.
typically it's throughout the state of Florida. So
Mhm.
the key thing is definitely go see your counselor or your administrator. they have the answer because they know who they're contracted with. They know who's deemed the person to come into the school, because typically they have to have a level 2 background check to even be able to come in and perform the service or a vendor application. So they're gonna know hands down who it is. I love when Smitty brought up, like, sometimes, it's unclear what the counselor knows. And I will say it will always be dependent on the counselor. Some counselors are very informative because they're out in the community and they're learning who those other additional partners are. Some counselors will only know what the school tells them. They're not going to know anything outside of that. But then you will have the counselor that goes above and beyond, that has the additional resources. So they're the ones that are tied into community. They don't mind going the extra mile and digging up the information for you. And you're always going to run across the great one and then the lackadaisy one. Like, it's a given, no matter what state, no matter what county, no matter where you are, there's always going to be that one counselor. But don't give up. If you have a school with 5 counselors, ask all 5 counselors, because each counselor is going to tell you something different. And it's because of what they know and who they've connected to. So don't be ashamed to just go around and ask each counselor a different thing, because all of them are going to have something different to offer you. 211. Dial 211, because they too are a community's hub of resources that you can utilize to find anything that you're typically needing to use. So I love all of these tools and all of this wisdom that you guys are sharing, so that not just our students but our families as a whole can continue to find information, because caregiving is hard. It's definitely a struggle, and we see it every day, right? Whether we went through it ourselves or we know people who have had to take on those responsibilities. We see the drain, we see the roller coaster of emotion, and it is like everybody needs a resource.
So, uh, the next question I was gonna ask was, how can teens access mental health resources if they are feeling overwhelmed? Uh, like, let's say like they're feeling overwhelmed right now and they're not at school. What resources should they look for to be able to get through it? If they're not at school, or if they're not like with people they know, or something like that.
Off the top of my head, excuse me, off the top of my head, I'm thinking partnerships. And again, like Sis said, each location is probably going to be a different nuance depending upon your location and who's doing what, right? So I know here in California, in our area, probably throughout the state, I don't want to say that, 100%, but I believe throughout the state, we have healthcare providers that have partnerships or contracts, with other small clinics or programs, resources, what have you, to provide these things. So if you are a young person and you're not in school for whatever reason, I want to say this: first and foremost, do whatever you can to get your education sent home. As much as it's important that you take care of your loved one, it is important that you don't sacrifice your growth as well. All that aside, I understand. But if you're looking for some assistance, if the person you're taking care of has health coverage, I would look into their programs and see who they partner with for resources for you. Again, I know here in California, they have a lot of resources for caregivers, whether you need time off, whether you need, assistance with the electricity bill or food or whatever the case is. Now, again, it's not easy. And I think we're asking a lot for a young person to try to navigate, because as a grown person, I think we struggle with trying to navigate how to get the resources from healthcare, whatever that may look like, So I think it's kind of twofold for a young person. If you have the wherewithal and the energy to navigate uh, the healthcare provider system, to look for services for yourself, fine. If not, maybe reach out to someone, again, an adult who you trust that maybe has some background experience with that, or maybe, the crazy thing about it is, you know, our world is so small, and sometimes it's not, what you know, it's who you know, pretty much. And then who you know may know somebody. You know what I'm saying? So if you hear this, just follow me. If you hear this, you probably know Sister Abigail. If you know her, reach out to her. Now, she may not be able to help you like right now, but she probably knows somebody. Same with Dr. Lytle. Like if you see us, tap in. And then if we can't help you, we probably know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. And again, it's time. I know it's time consuming, but this is the process you have to go through if you want to make sure that you are healthy as well, because you can't take care of your loved one if you're not healthy.
You really well said. Good job. That was kind of what I was gonna go for, because it's kind of like, if you it's um there's always someone that knows someone, is a good way to put it. Because like, I well I grew up, like, again, as I said, I went to a private school where everyone kind of knew everyone. So even if I didn't know the person and I asked them, "Hey, do you know where I can find this so and so resource?" They could probably tell me, "Hey, I know, like, this family member of mine does it, and they do it down the street or whatever." So try and ask questions. Take initiative. It's the only way you find out things, I think, in my opinion.
And one additional resource that I just want to always make sure that folks are aware of, especially now that it's available, especially if you're in a position where you're not feeling like, if you're in crisis or you're having some sort of emotional distress, or whatever is going on, please know that the national mental health hotline is available. So that is 988, and you dial 988 on your phone. You can go to 988lifeline.org online. And so and I'll put that in the chat, because I think that sometimes just if you're in the midst of a crisis and not knowing where to go or what to do, that's just it. Instead of, if it's not a police offense or something that you need to call the police for, and it's a mental health or wellness challenge, 988 is a great place for resourcing.
So the next question I have, again, going with this whole, like, how to find resources, um, how can teens learn about resources provided through healthcare providers? Um, and the one thing I'll say about that, because I work in a clinic. It's not a mental health clinic, but it is a clinic. So in general, with clinics, there's so many different things within that one clinic. Um, and for the most part, to learn what your healthcare provider gives is, once again, reaching out, calling. Most of the time, like, most of the calls that I pick up are because I work with phone calls at the clinic. Most of the time, the calls are literally like, "Oh, do you offer this?" or "Do you know a place that offers this?" And most of the time, I am able to refer them to a place that, if we don't offer it, I know somewhere else that can offer it. So it's not something, we're on the phone answering phone calls to answer your questions. So it's not something to be scared of, because I think a lot of people, like, feel very overwhelmed when it comes to, like, healthcare, because healthcare is an overwhelming thing in general. But I feel like, just like taking that step and being like, okay, if I see a clinic that's nearby, let me call them and see if they have this resource. If they don't have this resource, do they know where I can find one? Or if there's a website I can go to, or Google. Internet is amazing. Sometimes you can just put it in and you can find the resource that you need. Um, and I also would try and look up, like, stuff that is covered by your insurance, because sometimes there's stuff that is covered that you didn't know was covered. I know that that's another thing I get calls about all the time. Is like, "Oh, I didn't know that was covered. Is it actually covered?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's covered." So yeah, that would be my thing. Is there anyone else that would want to say a piece about that? Because I talked more medical, because I work in a medical clinic, but uh,
Yes, because I was going to say, a lot of times you can ask your doctor office, or especially if you got somebody that's sick and need the references and everything, and depending on it, your doctor office will be able to refer you to some other different groups and stuff, to help you get that next resource that you have.
Mhm. Anyone else want to add anything?
I think you pretty much said it. But again, you know, I think, just speaking from my own experience, you know, it's hard. If you're a young person and you hear my voice and you are a caregiver, first, I just want to commend you for taking on that responsibility. Two, you probably don't know you need assistance. Sometimes we have to be conscious that we need assistance. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it. That's normal. We get in the way of doing things and we just do. We exist, we survive. So then the challenge comes when we recognize now that we need help. All right. And then to your point, how do we find that? Therein lies the challenge itself. And, not to, promote what I do or why I do what I do, but, one of the organic reasons was, I heard somebody at a city rally or meeting, whatever you want to call it, and they were saying what these wonderful things are that the city offered, all these resources that were there, funded, fully funded for people to take part of, but nobody was using it. So the money was being reallocated somewhere else. And then a couple of local clergymen stood up and was like, well, how come we don't know about this? Like we service and we provide for the people, but we don't know about it. And so that's kind of what I do. What I do with, some of my social media platforms is try to fill those gaps, because I can guarantee you in every city, that there is a resource specifically for this conversation we're talking about, for young people who provide care. Now, does everybody know about it? I don't know. And that's the challenge, and I say this all the time, and I hope if you're listening to me, adults, um, I challenge you to go to your local city council meeting or whoever and say this. When we have programs and resources and funding available for whatever demographic we're talking about, it's easy for the city to say, oh, yes, it's here, right? But they don't tell nobody. That's just like me. If I have a barbecue this Saturday, nobody shows up. And then on Monday and Tuesday, I hit everybody up here and be like, hey, man, how come you didn't come to my barbecue? It was free. All the food is on me. And you like, well, Schmidt, you didn't tell us. I didn't tell you, but it was here. Like you supposed to know that it's here and how to get there, especially when we're talking about young folks. So the challenge is finding the resources. They are there. You have to talk, and sometimes putting a lot more pressure on young people. So talk, and research. Get on your phone, get on TikTok, get on anywhere, and just type in help, youth help or help with parents or any. I'm sure it's going to lead you to where you got to go eventually.
Yeah, the next question I have is one I wanted to talk about for I was waiting. It was lock and loaded. Was what are some local and national organizations that advocate for young caregivers? Because we've talked a lot about how like there are resources out there, um, but do you guys know any organizations or um, national or local? Like for example, one good national one is 988, the Lifeline for mental health crisis, which Dr. Lytle did amazing in talking about. Um, but is there any other ones that you guys can think of?
I know here in our little area, they call it Care Solace with a C, Care Solace. There's also Solano Connect. Again, these are really micro local to my area. I know of them because I've had to deal with them in the past. Again, I think Dr. Lytle said it earlier. If you do a Google search, you put in your location, mental health support, or, whatever words you want to use, advocate. And again, let me say this, being mindful. When we're young folks, if you're listening, I know some of these words might be challenging. If no one ever introduced you to the word advocate, then why would you Google search that? You know what I'm saying? So I think we still got to be mindful of who we're dealing with and what we're expecting them to know, right? Especially maybe if English is not your first language. How would you know advocate if no one put it out there for you, or resources, or whatever the trigger word is to make that Google algorithm pick up, all the resources assigned to that word. So very, very tricky, but again, just use your best words, I guess. That's the best I can say. And then again, just talk to your folks around you.
One of the things, like, even as we've been on this webinar, I was able to do a quick search. And so there is an actual American Association of Caregiving Youth, and they specifically specialize in resourcing. It says their mission is that they are the only organization in the US dedicated solely to addressing caregiving youth issues. And so I posted that in the chat. The first post is just that it's AACY.org, American Association of Caregiving Youth. But when you go there, they actually have a page dedicated to resources. And so the reason why I'm specifically giving that is because I feel like they will likely have more national organizations listed. Obviously, if you're looking at places that are or looking at local resources, that will come up, those will come up as well for your area. You can just put in things like caregiving if you're not sure, what advocating means, or what you should be looking for. But it gives you just some things that it has videos, it has books, it has links that will connect you. They have a lot of just good information that I was able to kind of browse through just that quick. And so please know that if you don't know what's out there, it is easy to find some stuff if you have access to the internet, or can go to the library and get on one of the computers if you don't have access at home. But my hope is that there are different opportunities, whether it's at school or at home or at the library, local library, where you can find these types of resources or search out these types of resources, and maybe get connected with some other people who are already trying to make sure that youth in similar positions are being supported.
Really well said. Anyone else want to add anything before I move on? Or okay. So we talked a lot about mental health resources, but now let's talk about financial resources, because with caregiving, right? And we talked about being in school, especially with college, right? What are some examples of financial aid or grants available for caregiver families? I know that at Valencia, the school I go to here in Florida, we recently have put in place a place where if you have little kids and you're still going to classes, you're able to drop them off completely for free at this kind of care babysitting kind of area over at Valencia. It's over at building at West Campus. I think it's building 1. I could be wrong. But they started that recently for students who do have young children and can't just leave them at home and go to school. So that's a resource at Valencia. It's not necessarily a financial aid or a grant, but it's free childcare. So I feel like that's the one that would, I think, count under financial. Anyone else have any other examples?
Well, I'll just put this out there first and foremost. That's going to depend, right? It's going to really depend on the school that you're at. It's going to depend on the level of school you're doing, whether it's undergraduate or graduate. It's such a nuanced question. There's so many different things that are going to impact what's available, what access you have, all of those things. So if we're starting with kids who are in elementary or high school, there's likely not going to be a financial support in that way. However, I know that there are different local organizations, like, if you're looking for your first job or something like that, where you might be able to have support with daycare or get a stipend for things like that. So there's some stuff that might exist, but that's again going to be figuring out who are your trusted adults, who are the people who can help resource you in that space, or just putting the nitty to the gritty and figuring it out yourself, doing your own research. But I think as far as students who are once we move into the college level and graduate level studies, there are going to be different organizations that, depending upon who you are as an individual, because I think there are going to be times when you can find grants that are specific for Black women who are single moms or who are young mothers. There are going to be grants or scholarships that you might be able to find because you are a first generation student who is trying to support a family. So there are resources, but it's going to be very specific to who you are, very specific time frames, very specific to the level of school. So it's going to really depend. There is no blanket answer here, but I think that there, again, to Smitty's point, there are often resources that go untapped because people don't know to look for them or people don't know how to find them. And so I think the biggest part of that question would be, or the biggest thing that I'd want folks to take away from even the thought of this question would be, what are some things about me that make me unique that I can look for resources specific to who I am as an individual? Because that might set you apart and make it a little bit easier for you to get that grant or get that support.
And a lot of those, let's just say grants, right? The struggle is, one, finding it, right? It's finding it. Two, a lot of it may be requirements, right? They're going to ask information that you need to know, whether it's for the person or for you or whatever the case is. And it might be a process, might be a 30-day, might be a 60-day. I mean, I don't know, but there will be a process. So therein lies the struggle again. We're talking about finances needed immediately, but then there's bureaucracy that is always going to be there unless you find a nonprofit or someone else that's providing immediate services, and again, those are local, those services are local, but some of those just don't last long. And when I say all of that, I say, well, if we're talking financial, right, the grants given by the city or other nonprofits, once you get it, now again, there's a process, there's requirements you got to, but once you get it, hopefully you're recurring now. You don't have to constantly request funds. You're on their list. They know that. As long as you're providing where you guys are, the keeping it constant, it shouldn't be a problem. But what you don't want to do, and this is just a heads up, young folks, if you do go through the process and you do get that grant, and let's just say it's a grant for your rent, don't let it lapse. Don't get caught, because now you got to do it all over again. You know what I'm saying? So again, that would be my thing, because finances are hard. That's extremely hard. Yeah, man, that's. I wish I had the answer, but man, finances are so hard to deal with, and where to go get them. I will say this: if you're a young person, I know you have some kind of social media device or some kind of internet device, whether that's your phone or your laptop, your tablet, or whatever. Go to your Google, or I mean, I don't know how Apple works, but go to whatever search engine, put in your city manager, say, who is my city manager, and then your address or your zip code, so you don't want to put too much information out there, or the name of your city. That will take you directly to your city manager. Hit that link. There will be an email address link associated with it. Send him an email and say, this is who I am. This is what I do. Can you help me? He's going to send you all, well, he should, or she should send you all the information you need. In a perfect world.
In a perfect world, that would happen. I with scholarships and grants, while I'm not a caregiver, I am first gen. So when I applied to colleges, I was looking up like first gen college scholarship in Florida and then going down a list. Valencia specifically has on if you were at Valencia specifically, I don't know if it's probably different for other colleges, but at Valencia, they give us a list of scholarships you can apply for through our like student portal. So if you go to like financial aid in the student portal, you should be able to find a whole list of scholarships, and a lot of them do not require even an essay to be able to do them, which is nice. They're harder to get, but they're nice if you don't have the time to like get or you don't meet all the requirements for other ones. Another resource I recommend that I used a lot in high school is called Squire. Is SCOIR. They actually are really good with like college and high school resources for like finding scholarships, how to apply for them, when should you apply for them, who should you contact for scholarships and grants and all that stuff. And that's the resource I used as well during my time looking for them. So I find them really I found out those resources really useful. Again, it depends. As Dr. Lytle said, it depends on what school, where you are, if you're what state you're in, because I know it differs from state to state. But here in Florida, those are the resources I found very useful. I think Squire is national. You would just have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's national. And they have like blog posts explaining like step-by-step processes or other like government grants that you may have never heard of before that you can use as well. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and send it off to Jackie to send us off.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for joining us for Talk Tuesday as we honor the role of family caregivers, especially our young caregivers. Their strength, resilience, and dedication deserve recognition, and we hope this series has provided valuable insights and support for those balancing caregiving with personal life. Family caregiving is a journey filled with both challenges and rewards, and we are grateful to have shared resources, tips, and inspiration with our listeners. Remember, you're not alone in this role. There is support, guidance, and community available every step of the way. Before we go, don't forget to check our upcoming events at Steps Foundation. We would love to invite you, students, to join our programs, and there's still space available both virtually and at BVL Library. Our programs are a fantastic way to connect with peers, build essential skills, and have fun while learning. Plus, it's a great opportunity to expand your network. Mark your calendars for our special events this month. On November 23rd, we're hosting a family walk in the park at Kissimmee Lakefront, a perfect way to enjoy some fresh air and quality time together. Then on November 30th, get ready for a night of mystery and intrigue at our Underwood Cellars Murder Mystery event at Hart Memorial Library. You can even register for all events by visiting our website at www.stepsfoundation.org/events or by following us on social media at Steps Foundation, Inc. We hope to see you there. Caregivers, remember that the impact of your work goes beyond daily tasks. You're making a difference in the lives of those who depend on you. Take pride in each act of kindness, each day of dedication, and know that you are valued. To all caregivers and their families, we see you, we support you, and we appreciate you. Keep checking our website for resources. Stay connected with the community, and remember to take time for yourselves as well. We'll see you next time on Talk Tuesday.